They told me I didn't fit into their new perfect family. They said I was the problem, the disruption, the shadow in a house they were trying to brighten. They didn't hesitate to give my room to Kiera, my new stepsister, like it meant nothing. But what they didn't know was simple. This house was never theirs to claim. The deed, the memories, the life inside these walls, all belonged to me. They just didn't know it yet. When my dad, Callum, passed away, my whole world cracked open. He was the one person who made everything feel steady. Losing him felt like losing the ground beneath my feet. And then came the reading of the will. I was only 15, still trying to understand grief, when the lawyer said the house, the savings, everything my dad worked for, that was all legally mine. I wouldn't gain full control until I turned 21. But even then, my mom had no right to anything except temporary guardianship. It should have felt comforting, but instead, it made everything scarier. Because I already knew my mother, Brenda. I knew how she loved control more than she loved honesty. It didn't take long for the changes to begin. Just a few months later, Brenda brought home a man named Vance, full of confidence and sweet talk. He smiled too much and stared too long. The kind of man who always wanted to be the center of every room. And behind him came his two kids, Kiera, who acted like she was doing the world a favor just by breathing, and Bode, who followed his dad like a shadow. They moved in fast. Too fast. Boxes everywhere, voices everywhere, decisions being made without me. One day it was just me and the quiet. The next, it was loud laughter that didn't belong to us, new routines, new rules, and a feeling of being pushed further and further from the home I grew up in. Brenda acted like it was all normal. "It's good for us," she said. "A fresh start." But I didn't ask for a fresh start. I just wanted my life back. The one I had with Dad, where love didn't come with conditions and I didn't feel like a guest in my own house. The changes were small at first. The photos of Dad disappeared from the living room. My seat at the dining table shifted. My voice in conversations became something they brushed off, like buzzing they didn't want to hear. And then came the moment that confirmed everything. Brenda told me Kiera needed my room because it suits her better. They didn't even ask. They just moved her in, leaving my things piled in the hallway like I was some stranger passing through. That was the beginning. That was when I realized they weren't building a family. They were building a life where I had no place. But they forgot one thing. You can push someone out, but you can't take what was never yours to begin with. My 16th birthday showed me exactly where I stood in that house. I thought maybe we would have a small celebration, something that at least showed they cared. Instead, Mom called it a low-key dinner, and we ate cheap takeout at the table like it was nothing special. No cake, no decorations, no effort. I told myself it was okay, but the truth was it stung. But the real blow came the next weekend. Vance got a promotion, and suddenly our house turned into a party hall. Music blasted, fancy food covered the counters, and people filled every room laughing and celebrating. I stood there watching it all, feeling invisible. When I mentioned how unfair it felt, Vance smirked and said I was being dramatic. Mom nodded and told me I was just going through teenage moods. It didn't matter what I felt. They dismissed everything I said. Then Vance introduced his so-called house rules. Funny how they only applied to me. My curfew was tightened so much I barely had time to breathe after school before needing to be back home. Meanwhile, Kiera and Bode could stay out late without anyone questioning them. On top of that, I suddenly became the house cleaner. I washed dishes, cleaned bathrooms, folded laundry, swept floors, chores that the others somehow never touched. If I complained, I was told I needed to contribute more. But the hardest part wasn't the rules or the chores. It was watching my dad disappear from the house piece by piece. One day, a photo from the living room shelf was replaced by a picture of Vance and his kids. Then another one from the hallway vanished. Soon, the dining room wall where Dad's favorite picture hung was empty too. I searched everywhere, confused and hurt, until I finally found a box in the attic. Inside the box were all the photos of my dad, stacked together, covered in dust, like he had never mattered. Standing there in that dim attic, holding those photos, I felt something inside me harden. They weren't just changing the house. They were trying to erase my past, erase him, erase me. And for the first time, I knew exactly what they were doing. I just didn't know how far they would go next. Mom told me about the room's switch like it was no big deal. She said it while wiping the counter, not even looking up at me. "Kiera needs your room," she explained. "She needs more space and natural light for her art." Just like that, no discussion, no warning. I was being moved to the tiny guest room at the end of the hall. the one that always smelled like dust and had a window so small it barely let in any light. I stood there for a moment, trying to understand why my comfort didn't matter. My room wasn't just a room. It held pieces of my life, pieces of my dad. He had built the little library nook in the corner with his own hands, sanding the wood late at night while I sat beside him, talking about books. It was my safe place. So I finally spoke up, telling them I didn't want to move and reminding them of what Dad had created for me. Before Mom could even answer, Vance stepped in. He crossed his arms like he always did when he wanted to look in control. "This is a fresh start for all of us," he said. "Don't be selfish, Harlow." Selfish. That word hit hard. Wanting to keep the room my dad made for me suddenly made me selfish in their eyes. I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't say anything else. I knew nothing I said would matter. So I walked down the hall to see what was left of my space. When I turned the corner, my heart dropped. Kiera was already inside my room, arranging her posters on the wall like she had lived there for years. She didn't even look guilty. She just smiled and said, "Hope you don't mind." My things were thrown into the hallway in a messy pile. Books, clothes, notebooks, even the blanket my dad bought me. It looked like someone cleared out the room in a hurry, without caring what got bent or broken. I kneeled down and picked up my belongings one by one, trying to breathe, trying not to cry. Every item felt like a reminder of how little space I had left in my own home. When I finally went to the guest room, I saw the small bed pushed against the wall and the single drawer that barely opened properly. The air felt heavy and stale. It didn't feel like a bedroom. It felt like a place where unwanted things were stored. As I sat on the edge of the bed, surrounded by boxes and bags, I realized something important. They weren't just moving me to another room. They were moving me out of their world, little by little. And for the first time, I understood I had no power there, not yet. I came home late that night because I had stayed at the library to study for my SATs. I was tired, hungry, and just wanted to sleep. As soon as I walked through the door, Vance was standing there, arms crossed, acting like he had been waiting just to catch me. He didn't ask why I was late or how studying went. He only said I was breaking curfew and setting a bad example for his kids. His voice was sharp, and it cut through me like I had done something terrible on purpose. I tried to explain. I told him I was studying, that the library closed later that night, and that I had texted Mom. None of that mattered to him. He talked over me and made it sound like I had been out doing something wrong. When I looked at Mom for support, she just stood there, rubbing her hands together like she wanted the whole conversation to end quickly. The argument grew bigger and louder. I felt cornered, like there was no way to defend myself. Vance kept going, accusing me of disrespect and saying I didn't care about the rules he set. I could feel my voice shaking as I tried to defend myself, but every word I said was turned against me. Mom finally stepped in, but not for me. She stood beside Vance and told me I needed to adjust because he was part of the family now. She said I had to respect him, even when he didn't respect me. Hearing her say that broke something in me. I looked at her, hoping she'd take it back or explain, but she avoided my eyes. It felt like she had already chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. Then Vance delivered the final blow. His voice was cold and firm. "If you can't live by the rules of this house, you can't live here." Just like that. No warning. No discussion. He said it like throwing me out would make everything better for them. I turned to Mom, waiting for her to defend me, to say something, anything. But she didn't. She kept her eyes on the floor and stayed silent. That silence told me everything I needed to know. My chest felt tight as I walked to my room. I packed my bags slowly, touching each item like I was saying goodbye. I tried not to cry, but the pain felt too heavy. I zipped up my suitcase, looked around the small, stuffy room they had pushed me into, and felt completely alone. I walked out without another word. No one stopped me. No one asked where I would go. The door closed behind me, and with it, the last part of the home I once knew. When I arrived at my grandparents' house that night, I didn't even have to explain what happened. The moment Grandma saw my face, she opened her arms and held me tight. Grandpa stood behind her, his jaw tight, trying to control his anger. They didn't ask me to defend myself or justify anything. They only told me I was safe now, and that I could stay as long as I needed. Their home felt warm in a way mine hadn't felt in years. They made me tea, sat with me on the couch, and let me speak when I was ready. When I finally told them the whole story, Grandpa's hands shook with anger. Grandma wiped my tears and kept saying, "Your father would never have allowed this." Hearing that made me feel loved again, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Living with them brought me a kind of peace I didn't expect. I could breathe without being judged. No one watched the clock when I left the house. No one blamed me for things I didn't do. I had a quiet room, real meals, and people who cared about how my day went. With their support, I finished my last year of high school stronger than I thought I could. I studied hard, stayed focused, and slowly began rebuilding myself. Grandma helped me with college applications, reading every essay I wrote. Grandpa drove me to school when I needed him to. Their belief in me made me believe in myself again. When I got accepted into a good college, they celebrated like it was the biggest achievement in the world. I worked part-time at a cafe to help with expenses and stayed busy with school. Every step forward felt like a small victory over the pain I had come from. But even as I moved forward, part of me never forgot the house, my father's house. The place he built with love. The place where I once felt safe. I knew the truth about the will, but I also knew the people living there wouldn't make it easy for me. So I reached out to Mr. Yates, my father's old lawyer. I met him secretly during school breaks, not wanting anyone to know our plans. He reviewed everything carefully and explained my rights. Each meeting made me more certain of what I needed to do. He told me that once I turned 21, the house would legally and fully be mine. No arguments. No loopholes. No way for Brenda or Vance to twist it. As my 21st birthday got closer, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I wasn't that scared 16-year-old anymore. I had grown, studied, worked, and healed. And now, with Grandpa, Grandma, and Mr. Yates by my side, I was ready. On the morning of my birthday, Mr. Yates handed me the final documents. The house was mine. Completely mine. That day, we began planning how I would take it back. Not out of revenge alone, but because it was my home, my father's gift, and my right. Every time I went back to the house during college breaks, it felt less and less like the place I grew up in. I only went because I didn't want to give them a reason to say I was ungrateful or dramatic. The visits were short, just for holidays, and each time, something inside me tightened a little more. From the moment I stepped through the door, I could see how completely they had taken over. Brenda walked around like the queen of the house, giving orders and smiling proudly at the changes they made. Vance acted like he owned every wall, every room, every memory. Kiera and Bode treated me like a guest, not someone who had lived there her whole life. They never asked how I was doing. They only talked about their new hobbies, their new decorations, their new routines, as if the house had always belonged to them. One afternoon, I decided to look around the backyard, trying to hold on to anything that still felt familiar. My dad's workshop used to be there, the place where he fixed things and built little wooden gifts for me. It had smelled like sawdust, old tools, and sunshine. Now, when I opened the door, I felt my stomach twist. Gone were his tools. Gone were his wooden shelves. The workshop had been completely changed. A big TV was on the wall. Leather chairs, sports posters, and a mini fridge filled the space. Vance saw me standing there and proudly announced, "My man cave." Perfect, right? Perfect. That word hit me hard. Nothing about it felt perfect. It felt like watching someone paint over the last memory of my father. The garden wasn't any better. My dad used to take care of it every weekend. He grew tomatoes, peppers, and flowers that made the yard glow in spring. Now the plants were dry and dying. The soil looked untouched, as if no one had bothered to care since the day I left. Seeing it like that made my chest ache. Inside the house, their conversations were the worst part. They talked about their house, like they had paid for it or built it themselves. Vance mentioned knocking down walls to make the kitchen bigger. Brenda talked about painting over the living room where Dad and I once spent hours reading together. Kiera and Bode discussed turning the basement into a game room. Not once did they ask what I thought. Not once did they remember that the house wasn't theirs to plan for. They didn't even try to include me. They didn't even pretend. Listening to them, I kept my face calm, but inside, something grew stronger. Their words didn't break me. They sharpened me. Each careless sentence, each thoughtless renovation, each ignored memory, it all pushed me closer to what I knew I had to do. They thought the house was theirs forever. They thought I had been erased. But I knew the truth. And every visit only made me more determined to take back what my father left for me, completely and without apology. The day finally came. I had been waiting for it for years, counting down the days until I could step back into the house that was rightfully mine. I stood on the porch that morning, the sun warm on my face, a set of new keys in my hand. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. Today was the day I would reclaim what was mine. I saw the car pull into the driveway. Brenda, Vance, Kiera, and Bode stepped out, laughing and carrying their luggage, still talking about their vacation. They looked relaxed, like they had nothing to worry about. I watched them quietly, pretending to be calm while feeling a fire inside me. Vance was the first to reach the door. He took out his key and tried to unlock it, turning it over and over. When it didn't open, his brow furrowed. He pulled harder, jiggled it, muttered curses under his breath. I stepped forward slowly, my voice calm but firm. That won't work. The locks have been changed. Confusion flashed across their faces. Kiera froze, Bode looked angry, and Brenda opened her mouth as if to argue, but no words came out. Vance's hands shook slightly as he realized the key in his pocket no longer fit the lock he had trusted. I took a deep breath and reached into my bag. From inside, I pulled out the legal deed. I held it up so they could see it clearly. My father left this house to me, I said, keeping my voice steady. It is mine now, and you have 2 weeks to get out. For a moment, there was silence. I could feel the tension thick in the air, heavy and sharp. They looked at each other, and then at me, like they couldn't believe what I was telling them. Brenda's eyes widened, and I could see the shock mix with panic. Vance's jaw tightened as anger bubbled up, but I didn't flinch. I had imagined this moment so many times. I had waited patiently, planned carefully, and now the house that had been taken from me for so long was finally back in my hands. I could see it in their faces. They had never expected me to fight back, never expected me to have the law, and never expected me to stand so firmly in my truth. I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I didn't give them a chance to protest. I just stood there, calm and unwavering, letting them feel the weight of the moment. They had treated me like I had no place here, but now everything had changed. For the first time in years, I felt the house belonged to me again. I knew it would take some time for them to leave, but I also knew that I would not back down. This was my home, my father's gift. And finally, it was mine. Brenda's face turned red, and she screamed at me. "You're so vindictive and ungrateful," she shouted. "After everything I've done for you, you do this? This is my home too." Her voice shook with anger, and I could see how much she hated being told she had no right. Vance stepped forward, his fists clenched. "I'll call a lawyer." "You can't just take the house like this," he growled. I stayed calm, holding my ground. "You don't need to call anyone," I said. "Mr. Yates has already handled everything. Any legal challenges you try will fail. The house is mine, and it always has been." Kiera's face crumpled, and she began to cry. "Where will we go?" she asked, her voice small and scared. Bode's expression was the opposite, pure hatred, his eyes cold and hard. I could see all the frustration and anger in him, but it didn't scare me. I had waited for this day, and I wouldn't back down. Brenda tried a different approach. She softened her voice and placed a hand on her chest. "Harlow, you would make your own mother homeless?" she said, her words full of fake guilt. I looked at her straight in the eyes and felt no fear. "You chose your actions years ago," I said quietly but firmly. "You let me be pushed out, and you let Vance take over. I didn't take your home. You gave me no choice but to take back what's mine." She gasped and looked like she wanted to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. I stayed calm, letting my words sink in. This was not about revenge. It was about what was rightfully mine. It was about the house my father left me, the home I had grown up in. I could see it now, the truth of who they were. Brenda had cared more about control than family. Vance had cared more about power than respect. Kiera and Bode had only followed their lead. Their anger, fear, and confusion filled the room, but I didn't step back. I didn't shout, I didn't cry. I stood quietly, holding the deed in my hand, the proof that the house was mine. I could see them realize, finally, that nothing they said or did would change that fact. I took a deep breath and let the silence grow. They were left with nowhere to argue, nowhere to threaten, nowhere to hide. I was calm, steady, and in control. For the first time in years, I felt complete. The house was mine, the memories were mine, and finally, I had justice. They had revealed who they truly were, and I saw it clearly. I didn't need to fight anymore. My father's gift, my home, and my future were all in my hands now. I looked straight into Brenda's eyes, and for the first time in years, I wasn't scared of her. My voice didn't shake. "You made your choice 6 years ago," I said slowly. "You stood there and let him kick your daughter out. You stopped being my mother in this house a long time ago." She blinked fast, like she couldn't believe I was speaking to her like that. But I wasn't that scared girl anymore. I wasn't the teenager begging for a place to stay. I was the owner of the house, and I finally felt the strength I had been building for years. Vance started talking again, trying to twist everything, but I didn't move. I didn't argue. I didn't try to explain. I held on to the 2-week deadline, firm and unmoving. You have 14 days, I said. Not a day more. Brenda tried another round of pleading. Kiera begged. Bode muttered something under his breath. But none of it touched me. They talked like their whole life depended on convincing me, but I didn't let their words sink in. I had spent too many nights crying over what they did. Too many days wishing things had been different. Now, I only cared about taking back what was mine. They tried guilt. They tried anger. They tried to scare me. Nothing worked. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult them. I didn't even explain myself again. I just repeated, 2 weeks. Then I turned around. I walked past them, my steps steady, like I had walked into this house 1,000 times before. The key slipped smoothly into the new lock, a soft click that felt like the closing of an old chapter. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air felt different, lighter, cleaner, safer. This was my father's house. My home. My place. I could hear them behind me, muttering, whispering, trying to understand how everything had changed so fast. Their voices sounded small, like they were far away, even though they were only a few feet from the porch. I looked back once, only long enough to see their stunned faces in the driveway. Their bags were still in the trunk from their vacation. Their smiles were gone. Their confidence was gone. Their world was falling apart, and they knew it. Without another word, I closed the door. The sound echoed through the house, strong and final. For the first time since I was 16, I didn't feel like an outsider. I wasn't the unwanted child or the quiet guest. I wasn't the girl they thought they had pushed out forever. I was the daughter of the man who built this home. I was the rightful owner. I was someone they could not push anymore. And with that closed door, I ended the life they had built on top of my pain. 2 weeks later, I stood quietly by the upstairs window and watched the moving truck pull into the driveway. The morning was calm, and for once my heart felt calm too. I didn't hide behind the curtains or worry about what the neighbors would think. Let them look. Let them whisper. I felt no shame. All I felt was a slow, steady sense of justice I had waited years to see. Their boxes were carried out one by one. Kiera's art supplies, Bode's sports gear, Brenda's decorative pieces she once bragged about, and Vance's loud tools he had stuffed into the workshop that never belonged to him. All of it leaving. All of it finally out of my home. The neighbors stepped outside to watch, curiosity written on their faces. Some looked confused, others surprised. A few even nodded at me when they spotted me through the window, like they understood something bigger had happened. I didn't nod back. I didn't need to. This moment wasn't for them. It was for me. Brenda was the last to come out of the house. She slammed the car door harder than she needed to, her face tight and full of anger. She looked up at the window and found me standing there. Our eyes met for a brief second. Her expression said everything. Hurt, disbelief, betrayal, as if I had done something terrible to her. But I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I didn't give her anything. I simply turned away. The sound of the car engine starting drifted through the quiet street. Then the truck pulled out. And just like that, they were gone. When the last bit of noise faded, the house fell into a deep, warm silence. For the first time since my father died, it felt like a safe silence, not an empty one. I walked down the stairs slowly, letting the echo of my footsteps fill the space they once tried to claim. Every room felt bigger, brighter. Mine. I went to the living room and stood in the exact spot where my father's favorite chair used to sit. I could almost see him leaning back in it, smiling at me after a long day. My throat tightened, but this time it wasn't from pain. It was from relief. I placed my hand on the wall beside me and whispered, "It's ours again, Dad." The words felt like a blessing, like a promise kept. I breathed in deeply, letting the peace settle inside me. This house no longer held the weight of their rules, their voices, their control. It held freedom. It held my history. It held my future. The chapter of pain was closed. And for the first time in years, I felt ready, truly ready, to start my life on my own terms. Do you think I made the right choice taking back my home, or should I have given them another chance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories like this.